Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin tonight's meeting. If everyone would please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we have a roll call?
Waldron,
Present.
Freihofer,
Here.
Tell.
Present.
And I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I motion to approve. I'm sorry, I don't have it.
You're good.
I motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, our next item is going to be approval of our regular meeting minutes from last month on February 4th, 2025, and approval of our special meeting minutes from February 18th, 2025. Are there any edits, additions, or motions for approval?
I motion to approve meeting minutes on date February 4th, 2025, and special meeting minutes from February 18th, 2025.
I second.
And this one we can do an oral vote also, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, so we will now take public comment for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. So this is just if you have a general comment for the Planning Commission. This is the moment for that. If you're here to make a comment about a specific agenda item, there's also public comment for each agenda item. Are there any general public comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the public hearing session of our section of the meeting with the first item, resolution number 4, which is Sligo Land Group LLC, to convert an existing development into separate for sale occupancies. And Nancy's going to tell us a little about that.
Thank you, Emily, and good evening. So this first request is a fairly simple project. The idea here is to divide into separate ownerships an existing commercial development located at 111 South Sligo Street. So it's the existing development, you can see there that says, I can't point to it. Can you point to it for me? Right in there. There are 4 existing businesses in 2 existing buildings. Proposal to add 1 additional building and then create a separate parcel for future development. Property zoned commercial highway for now. And it is bounded on 3 sides by commercial development. Actually, on the west side, it's also zoned commercially, but currently vacant. The project existing development there does meet all the development standards. And I'm gonna point out to you a little bit of where, so there's 3 existing businesses in this building here. This is a separate, the dentist office right here in that building. The proposal, and you'll see that in a minute, is to have an additional building here and then create a whole separate lot that may or may not in the future be developed. So here's the actual plat that will take those existing buildings, divide them into this one into 3 separate ownerships. The other building will be its own ownership, and then the future building, which will need to be built, will also be a separate ownership. Everything in the hatch colors will be part of what they call general common elements, or in other words, all the separate owners will have a ownership in that common area. So they'll all have set up a association and jointly maintain and take care of that. I did go through all the standards. The project as standing was built to all current requirements. I even added in the new unproposed, building that's not proposed or that's not built yet. They actually have more parking than is needed for all 5 of those businesses, plus a few left over, so that if that the additional lot is developed in the future, there's probably room without adding more parking on there. The landscaping does already exceed the requirement. They've got over 4,000 square feet of landscaping. They're not proposing any changes to that. Let me just go over the agency comments. GIS had some questions that are all can actually be met. And we will cover the rest of them with the covenants. Sanitation district, atmospheric energy had a no comment. So basically what you're looking at is the criteria for development is all the criteria for subdivision, but also whether or not everything's adequate. And in this case, it says street rights of way, et cetera. In this case, really, it's the easements it's the main applicable criteria. We gave you a copy of the bylaws and declarations that they have proposed, and you've seen the plat. It does appear like it can meet all requirements. So with that, staff is recommending approval. We have 3 conditions. The first one is our standard. They need to meet all requirements. The other 2 are specific to condominium conversions. Number 2, they will need to notify all, it says residential tenants, but I think we'll put that with all tenants, at least 90 days prior to termination of any tenancy. And then they do need to file proof of that. And then the final one is basically that they need to record this within 6 months of city council approval, which this project will be heard later this month, assuming you recommend approval. Are there any questions? Lot D? Yes, so the idea is that Lot D might be, they're not sure how that might be developed. As you can see, the proposed Unit C, they have a footprint for that unit. They don't know about Lot D. It will be included in and share in the common elements, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
What I was trying to get at is it may be that when Lot D develops in the future, it's possible they need to expand their detention pond or expand their parking, and at that point, revisions might need to be made.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
It is safe to assume that Unit C will be made in similar structure and as the existing buildings, correct?
Yes, Unit C will actually require a site plan review, so it will come back in front of you.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think we have any more questions for staff. Is the applicant here to make a presentation? Okay, will you come up to the podium for us?
Yes, my name's Ken Coleman. I live at 6530 Clubhouse Drive in Farmington, New Mexico. Basically, Nancy has covered about everything we're going to do. The one question that you ask about the buildings will be similar to the ones that are already there, anything that we put in. When we did this 10 years ago, it was done in 2 phases, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Lot D does fall under Phase 2, which we did no plans for. Phase 1, we did all 3, A, B, and C. That was approved at the time, and that. Other than that, do you have any other questions?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
And do we have any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I think that we can deliberate, or I would entertain a motion.
I apologize for that. I move the motion that the commission recommends the city council approve resolution number 4, series 2025, a resolution recommending approval for the condominium plat for the Sligo Plaza condominium plat on property located on lot 1, block 2 of the Schwartz Minor subdivision as recorded in book 16, page 16 as reception number 534621 in the commercial highway C zone as submitted by Sligo Land Group LLC with the conditions stated in the resolution.
I second that.
Can we vote? Do you do a roll call for this one? Okay.
Tell,
Yes.
Freihofer,
Yes.
Waldron.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Our next agenda item is resolution number 7 from Independent Log Company, and Nancy is going to present for us on that too, I believe.
Thanks, I'm waiting a little bit. We have a representative of the applicant appearing virtually, and I want to make sure she gets on.
No worries.
Okay, here we go. So this is a request for a conditional use permit and a site plan on a 10-acre parcel. It's located at 1050 Lebanon Road. It may seem like a it may seem very similar to one you've seen here before, but I'm just going to make note to everybody that has heard a lot of this before. 2 of our planning commissioners are new, and we're not on the planning commission this fall, so we're gonna go into some of the basics with this project. So the use as a primary use is assembly of log homes, firewood processing, storage of wildland firefighting equipment as secondary uses. In short, I'll let the applicant explain their business, but Independent Log Company is a wildland firefighting company. They are often off-site and have equipment. Here's our location with the blue star there. They're often off-site, but they also do fire mitigation work in addition to firefighting. Part of that mitigation work, they will collect logs that they then use to manufacture log homes. As a secondary product would be firewood and some other commercial uses of the wood. As I mentioned before, in October of last fall, the Planning Commission actually reviewed this project and recommended approval. The applicants, after that meeting, submitted a revised site plan that provided some new information and changed some of the proposal. Staff looked at the new proposal, recommended that the changes were significant enough that they should come back through to the Planning Commission. Let me just go over a little bit. So we've got a close-up here on the site. As you can see, it's fairly well graded out. It has been used in the past for commercial uses. You can almost see on this aerial the old drive-in that used to be there. Access is at the southern end of the property. We have on the northern end of the side of the property is the access road to Carpenter Natural Area. Across to the west is Independent Log Company operates at 1107 Lebanon Road, and we have some other commercial and industrial uses starting up on Lebanon Road to the north. To the south is one commercial property that's been vacant for quite some time, and then over to the south and southeast, sort of, are residential homes. There is a fairly significant grade difference. The residential homes with the R1 zoning are significantly higher than this parcel. So they look over the parcel, but they aren't on the same plane as the proposed uses. I wanted to go over a little bit of the revisions that they made since you saw it last. And here's the new site plan in front of you now. Essentially the changes that at the previous meeting there was some discussion of buffers for the Carpenter Reserve. Though all that discussion and all proposed buffers have been removed from the application. There is a note on there now that they've added a statement that Independent Log Company will utilize all 10 acres per the project narrative. So in other words, this is meant to be somewhat illustrative and that things may move around on the site. The bandsaw and lean-to structure, which provides some noise mitigation, has been moved to the southern property line. We've had some removal of any reference to open space on the site. References to landscaping have been removed with the exception of the 2 small areas of decorative rock and log walls near the entrance. I think I removed that, but they're right in there. The log storage decks have been moved to the northern property line. Equipment storage areas have been moved from the northern property line, they were kind of where the log storage is, to the southern and eastern property lines. The site plan now shows a smaller area for processed firewood storage, although there is a note on there that says expand as necessary. And then maybe a pretty large change that I hope people might see as positive is in the southeastern corner. They are not proposing any grading of that hillside as they were before. Generally, I think we talked about that the property is commercially zoned. The uses that are proposed here, we have identified as contractor storage and equipment yards and manufacturing of wood products. Under our current land use code, manufacturing wood products definition does specifically refer to log home construction, which is what they're proposing here. Both manufacturing of wood products and equipment storage yards are considered, contractor storage yards are considered conditional uses in the commercial zone. So they're in front of you with a conditional use permit. Let's see what else. So I've got the definitions there for you. Now, you want to remember that the purpose of conditional use permits are to help mitigate concerns with uses that may have slightly more impact than other uses in that zone. You go to the next one. Yeah. And the intent here is to impose those conditions to make sure that the proposed use is compatible with adjacent existing uses, other uses in the zoning. And then the code goes on to talk about how the compatibility might be expressed in appearance, architectural scale features, site design scope, landscaping, and maybe most importantly, the control of adverse impacts, including noise, vibration, smoke, fumes, gas, dust, odor, lighting, glare, traffic, parking, etc. Any other undesirable or hazardous conditions. In this case, they are not proposing any permanent structures. This is all storage, outdoor storage, things that could move around on the site. The proposed, the second criteria is that they have incorporated design features sufficient to protect adjacent uses, and it gives you some examples with ways to do that, with buffering, fencing. Generally, we would think open space buffers, landscaping, etc. In this case, the applicants are not proposing any landscaping or buffering with open space. They believe that the adjacent to the residential properties, the difference in elevation really will serve as the best buffer that you could have. On the west and on the western side, the uses are fairly similar, and buffering for those probably wouldn't be necessarily or appropriate. And we've had a lot of discussion in the past on how to buffer or if you should buffer from the natural area adjacent. Here's third criteria, that they must any proposed accessory uses must demonstrate that they are necessary and desirable, comply with the requirements of the code, and mitigate any undesirable impacts. In this case, I think we've talked quite a bit about the firewood storage and processing. We would see that as an accessory use. The applicants have discussed in detail in their narrative why they believe that firewood is necessary and desirable. Essentially, it fills a need. It also makes sure that they're not having a waste product. They're using all the product that's on the site. Criteria number 4 is fairly easily met with this proposal. It's whether or not adequate public services such as streets, electricity, power, etc. are available without affecting other existing users. In this case, really all they need is the access. Without any permanent facilities on the site, they really don't need water, sewer, gas, electricity, none of that. Of course, police and fire protection may be a problem, and there were some conditions about they'll need to meet fire code for posting of the property for emergency response and safe operation of the site. Criteria number 5, they need to keep maintaining the property, etc. Move on. 6, they also need to conform with any adopted plans, hours of operation, policies, and requirements for parking, loading, etc., and any other regulations. That's why we've asked for a detailed narrative from them. Hours of operation are something that is important to neighbors as far as noise generation, etc., possible noise generation. And so we wanted to make it clear that they needed to propose that and that the city would then be enforcing that as a condition of approval. All right, and then, so I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of the specific criteria that they may or may not be meeting and why they felt that it wasn't appropriate to meet those. Criteria up on the board here about surfacing. The code does require that access driveways have a durable, dust-free, all-weather surface, and it goes on to say how you can do that. In this case, the site was paved at one time. There is asphalt on it. It's fairly deteriorated, but the applicants feel that it's adequate for their use, and that with all the storage and heavy trucks coming and going and equipment and sawing, etc., that paving of any of that site would not be appropriate, wouldn't work, and would be difficult to maintain. So they are asking to not do any additional paving other than the what's already on the site there. Go to the next one. Current code has a somewhat difficult to interpret definition of open storage. The current code disallows open storage of commodities, which is the firewood from our definitions. Previous discussions have been about whether or not it's open, if it were fenced or not. Essentially, the applicants say that fencing, screening, none of that really works with the way they operate, and they're asking to store the firewood in the open without any fencing on the site. Just suggesting that if you believe that that's an appropriate interpretation or need on this site, that you make statements as to why you feel like that's appropriate for this use. I gave you the criteria, our current criteria for landscaping and buffering. It does require that a minimum of 10% of the commercial area to be developed must be landscaped. The applicants are proposing 2 small, I've got a little detail of that on there, 2 small sort of zero-scaped with log walls, basically decorative. Their concern being that the way they will be operating this site, there really isn't a spot for landscaping, and also because there's no water source on site, they have concerns about how they would maintain any landscaping. So basically, they're not going to meet the 10% requirement unless you consider that existing vegetation on the site not being disturbed is adequate. And they're just proposing these small areas of landscaping. Go to the next one. So I think that was most of the issues I wanted to hit on. With that, staff is recommending approval. We have another number of conditions. I guess I should have made note that at the time that we reviewed this application, due to the fact that we'd lost our city engineer and we're going through some changes there, it took us a while to get engineering comments, and we didn't have them in place yet. We do now have them, included them in your packet. Those are the comments from SGM. So just to go over what I'm suggesting as possible conditions, would be our first one, which meet all requirements. Second would be to meet the requirements of the sanitation district regarding protection of the manholes in existing sewer line. Essentially, what they want is that any items that are placed over the easement must be easily moved in the event of an emergency. The address must be clearly marked for emergency response. The applicant shall comply with submitted project narrative at all times, including but not limited to operation of the business, noise levels, and hours of operation. Here's my exception to the paving requirement. The applicant shall control dust on the property by either paving, other surfacing, vegetation, watering, or chemical means. The next one would be the applicant shall comply with, that's Colorado Revised Statute 2512-103, which is maximum permissible noise levels at all times. Those noise levels, I think I had them in the staff report, they vary a little bit for night and daytime operations, and whether or not the receiving land use is residential, commercial, or industrial. They have all of those surrounding their property. And then if we could add one that says applicant shall comply with the additional requirements of the city engineer as noted in their review dated, I'll get to it, the SGM comments. In this case, because there's no building permits involved and they've already moved some equipment onto the site, we should probably say prior to initiation of operation or issuance of the land use permit, they should comply with those requirements. That's it. Are there any questions?
Can you put the site plan back up for a sec? And so this is looking at the engineering comments. Two of them stood out to me. Comment number 3, talking about the storing of the temporary log decks within the special flood hazard area. And I noticed that you didn't mention anything about that in your presentation, and I didn't know if that is the engineering comment correct? Like, does staff agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
The comments came in, last night, basically.
And then the other comment, that it didn't have an engineer's seal and signature. And I'm just kind of wondering, is that something that we don't always have engineer stamped plans come before us? Is there a reason in this case we might want one?
The comments from SGM are basically following our land use code.
Okay. Do either of you guys have any questions for staff?
I have a couple of questions. One is, there's only one, is there only one fire hydrant in that area? And I know there are fuel tanks over here on the west side that have been there for years. I don't know what the potential is for fire, but I know that you're working with wood and chainsaws, and they do put off sparks. You're going to have fuel. What happens if there's a fire in any of these and there's not an adequate enough water to put it out?
Do you want to address that to the applicant after their presentation?
Sure. And the other is, CDOT said anything, or have they made any recommendations on the traffic? Because they're going to have logging trucks coming in and out of there all day long, I would assume.
Yeah, I'll have to go back, but I believe the first time around, CDOT said that they did not have any concerns with it.
Okay.
There are full turn lanes at that intersection, so, with CDOT.
Yeah, that's my recollection as well from the previous hearing.
I did limit the comments when we resent this out to agencies. I limited to the agencies that had expressed comments at the last site plan, so I did not send it back out to CDOT.
I don't know if this is an appropriate question, but has Parks and Rec said anything about being, that they have access into the preserve there? And that is kind of a quiet area?
We did have some back and forth with Parks and Rec at the earlier site plan. Their last set of comments were that they had no comments.
And these no comments from Empire and Atmos, are they our latest reply from them, or was that from the previous?
Those would be the latest.
And you did state that none of these structures are on a permanent foundation that can be removed or switched around?
None of them are, there's really only one structure, which would be the lean-to around the bandsaw mill or the band mill. I was reminded that it does require a building permit for that structure,
Okay, thank you.
but
Was
it's
there-
not a permanent structure. It could be moved.
Was there any, the sound issues with the decibels, have there been any experimental trials with running chainsaws or the saws, or, you know, the noise that might be down there and monitoring the decibels to see if they fall with, I'm not sure, but I think it's 55?
Depending on the time of day and what the receiving land use is, that sounds right. That'd be another good question to direct to the applicant. I believe they have done some testing. We've set the condition as you've got to meet that state statute, and I believe they think that they can do that based on their tests, but I'm going to let them.
And so is it a possibility that they could run some testing to see what the sound?
I believe they have done that. We have not gone out to verify with noise meters or anything like that, so.
Because I know that the traffic from the highway runs right straight up that canyon and will go as far as the hospital.
Any other questions for
No.
staff? Any other questions for staff? No. Okay. Does the applicant want to present? I'm not sure if this is through Zoom. Are you all presenting? Okay. Okay.
Hello?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, good. I don't know if Mary and Tony, I assume they're there. I don't know if they want to go first or if they want me to go. Could somebody there just let me know?
Okay. Looks like they're going first.
Okay.
My name is Tony Moore, 1107 Lebanon Road. So yeah, we did do a noise test out there. I've done it twice. I did it 2 years ago, presented it to the city. Did it, I don't know, remember the date, but just a couple weeks ago, had numerous Carpenter Trail people at the noise level test. And 2 years ago, I got up here and stated that yes, the highway is the worst noise level. That's 60 to 80 decibels that comes across into that residence. During our noise level test, you know, I only have to be below 60 decibels. We were way below that. way below that. It's a non-issue. It's been debunked, period. We ran chainsaw, we ran the mill, we ran the truck, we ran the front end loader. We couldn't get nothing to, and we did it at different stations. The residents up there went up and had stations set up into the residence. They couldn't even hear us. They did a, what was that called, Terry? You know, a ballot thing that they filled out, you know, and it's debunked, you know. One thing that, meeting with the trail people, they're up there, a lot of the residents actually said, well, on the weekends and the weekdays, we're running our lawnmowers. So they're only limited to, I think it's 55 decibels. They're making more noise up there just with their lawnmower. So it's been a non-issue all along. Just nobody ever recognized it but me, because I already did test 2 years ago. And so, you know, I don't know what more to say about that. You know, I beat that dead horse many a times already. It is a non-issue.
So with the lean-to around the mill, and I would assume that that's to sound buffer that, is that correct?
Yes. So in the lean-to, and Nancy wasn't correct on, there's not one of them proposed, there's two of them proposed. Go back through the narrative, read the narrative. One is over the firewood processor, and one of them is over the LT40 wood miser. And so what that would do is help in any noise, and it's already a non-issue, but it's really gonna take the noise away then. But it's also, as what Nancy's always wanted, is buffers, screening. Screen the work site right there. Don't screen the whole 10 acres of the property and create a fence. So I've fought that for 2 years. I could have been through this approval a long time ago, but I wasn't gonna lock out the animals, and it made no sense. But you definitely could do some screening right around the operation, right there at the mill and right there at the firewood processor. So that's proposed in your packet. If you look at them structures, and they're temporary structures, and we will be fighting the permits. They're not a structure, it's a shed or a lean-to. You know, they don't have to be engineered and designed. So we're also asking planning and zoning, do away with this headache. We need to move forward and get this moving. It's been 4 years of the same repetitive stuff over and over and over. When I leave the property, I will take the structures down. It's just some temporary lean-to structures. And in that will act as a screening, and then it will make the area more desirable. It will help in noise. You know, it protects us from the weather. And again, they are temporary. It's not a structure. It's more like a lean-to shed.
Mr. Moore, did you want to just answer questions, or did you want to have a presentation? I just want to make sure, because if you have a presentation, we should do that first and then go back to answering questions.
That's kind of what I was moving forward on my presentation. That's part of my whole presentation right here. But if you have any questions,
we'll hold our questions till the end of the presentation.
The what?
We'll hold all questions till the end of the presentation.
Okay. So, the dust issue, so that wasn't correct as far as staff's report. The property used to be was the drive-in, and it already had a lot of gravel previously down before I ever bought the property. And so the whole area has been gravelled. Then I bought the property, and I've put fresh gravel over half of the property right now. I've spent $35,000 on gravel. So we intend on putting more gravel down, but also in our narrative, it states that we own several water tenders. And with them water tenders, if there is any dust, go right up the hill to the city water place. I have a card. You put water and take it down right down the hill, very accessible, and put a little water down. So that's again, this has been went over and went over and went over. Also in the graveling, staff stated that we weren't proposing any landscaping. The gravel is landscaping. We've been told that by the city attorney many a times. Boulders, gravel, any of that is part of landscaping. So we have the property right now halfway landscaped, you know. And so in the now to go over, you had already asked these questions, but these are already on my my proposal here, is you asked about hydrants or if there was any fires. So there's a hydrant at the northwest corner and there's a hydrant at the southwest corner. We have 10,000 gallon capacity. I'm a wildland firefighter. I'm the biggest resource Cortez has. Cortez just had a fire the other day down south of town. Me and my crew stopped the head of the fire. We was there before Cortez Fire Department got there. I stopped the head. Independent log company stopped the head of that fire south of town just the other day. Cortez staff and Cortez has not recognized the resource I am yet, but they better start getting used to it. That was just, when was that, Mary? Just 3 or 4 days ago? If you guys seen the smoke, man, it was a big column. That was a big fire. And only resource that put the head of the fire out was me and my crew. No other resources. It was just about ready to cross over the road and get into the mesa. So I have 10,000 gallons capacity of water. I have numerous apparatuses, fire engines, tactical tenders. I think I can handle a fire if something happens over there. Don't you? So now that's pretty much and the hydrants itself, you know, if you know anything about fighting fire, them are situated in such an ideal area that I also have about probably 8,000 feet of 1.5-inch hose that you just do a big hose lay right there. I can go right over there and tap into the hydrant and just lay hose right over there. I mean, water is endless for a fire. It's what I've said all along. It's the best location there is, you know, as far as just the compatibility as far as the neighborhood, you know. Again, that natural hill and the distance, once we got up on the hill, me and a guy named Brandon Hill measured the noise levels. You couldn't even hear anything I was doing down there. We'd turn off everything we were doing, and here was the highway noise still. The decimal reader stayed the same. It never went up when we made our noise. So again, that's been debunked. So if you guys have any other questions, I sure would answer them.
Okay. Yeah, since we're doing questions, thank you for your service in helping with the wildfires or the fire that happened a few days ago. I do appreciate that. As a resident here in Cortez, I'm curious if you could shed some light. I sure hope you're not making your employees work 24 hours. But it says here the property is surrounded by 24-hour uses. There is no need for hours of operation to be limited. However, log manufacturing and firewood processing will occur during the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Can you shed some light in what hours of operation? Because I don't want to assume Monday through Friday, 7 to 7, but what are the hours of your operation? It doesn't state here in your presentation.
Well, so the log home stuff and the firewood will be from 7 to 7. But if we are dispatched or there is a fire, I'm going to go into that yard
Yeah, that's
whatever time of the
understandable.
day or night.
Yeah, that's
It's an
understandable.
essential service,
Yeah.
and so that's how it's showing in the proposal.
Okay. And I guess I was just the log let's not the firefighting, but the log manufacturing and the firewood. What are your hours of operation? Are you planning to do? Because it's not stated here, and I'm just curious to know.
That's from 7 to 7.
7 days a week.
No, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then we put it Monday through Saturday.
Thank you.
That was in the proposal. Yeah, the 2-page document.
Okay. Thank you.
Really quickly, Rachel, did I mix it up? Should we do public comment and then questions for the applicant?
Hold on, the applicant's presentation isn't finished. I'm
Okay,
their attorney, yeah.
Okay, so you have two representatives presenting, and now it's your turn, Ms. Dakinish. Is that what you're saying? Sorry, I said it
Yes,
wrong.
yeah.
Will you tell me how to say your last name?
It's Daconish.
Dakonish, okay.
Yeah. So do you want me to go ahead or?
Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I'm Shelley Daconish. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Dufford Waldeck in Grand Junction, Colorado. I represent the applicant, independent log company, Mary and Tony. Just wanted to give you a little background. ILC or independent log company, I'll refer to them kind of either way. They have 35 years of experience, maybe 36 now because I did this this presentation about a year ago, operating a log home manufacturing, wildland fire suppression and mitigation, and a firewood processing business. Anthony Moore is a master log crafter, wildland firefighter, and firefighting task force leader. So he trains other wildland firefighters. ILC has had 54 contracts with the U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service Division for wildland firefighting, and that includes experience firefighting and mitigating fires in Montezuma County, where you all are. They've operated a very clean and compliant site for these same activities in Alamosa for many years and have been looking to move here and trying to do so for about 4 years now, trying to get through this land use process. And they're very anxious to start work on this site. They lose money every day that this site is not operational. The proposed land use has some public and community benefits, firefighting and mitigation, which you've already talked about. Firewood is an important commodity, especially for those on limited or fixed incomes, as an alternative to other more expensive heating sources. And the log homes that they manufacture are attractive and provide an important option for home buyers. Someone mentioned earlier that logging trucks would be going in and out all day long. That's not quite accurate. They deliver the logs to the site, and then they put a home together. They notch the logs and fit it together. Then they disassemble it and take it off site and build the house on the location where the home is going to be. And this doesn't entail logging trucks coming and going every day. There's a limited number of homes that they can build. They generally build one at a time on the site. And so I just didn't want you to have the wrong impression about the traffic that's going to be coming and going from there. And I think, you know, maybe Tony can speak in more detail about that if you have any questions. I had some pictures of the beautiful log homes, but I'm having trouble showing those here from my location. So, but I think you have seen them before, and there are also some pictures in our project narrative that you have. But I did send this PowerPoint presentation to Drew Saunders earlier today. So if you want to see those images, I think they're available there. Want to talk about the site plan a little bit. The site plan that you've looked at is in the process of being modified to comply with the engineer's comments. Those, unfortunately, we didn't get those comments until late last week, so the engineer needs a little time to modify the drawing. But it will show that the entry point there, it'll show the dimensions of that and that they're adequate for the trucks that are coming and going. It will show the culvert dimensions, which are also exceed what's required for that drainage. The drainage plan will also be revised to show the engineer's stamp and the drainage at the north property line, what that will be like. Also, it will show that the log deck that is in a little bit into the 100-year floodplain, that log deck will be moved out of the 100-year floodplain. So there's not going to be any storage in the floodplain there. So in sum, all the engineers' comments are going to be addressed, and the plans will be revised and submitted, hopefully before the city council hearing next week. The use of the site, I think it's important that there are no permanent structures proposed. Only the lean-to type pole barns over the miser and the processor. The open work area is kind of crucial for the operations. As you can see in some of the images, there's a lot of moving around things that happens during that processing, during the log home manufacturing. So they need that space to move around. It's also important, I think, to note that land uses that are allowed by right in the commercial zone would actually have more long-term impacts than independent log companies' proposed use of the site, because that would involve construction of a building and other permanent improvements that would limit that site's use far into the foreseeable future. Whereas this site, when independent log ceases operations here or moves, the site will just return to its vacant status and be ready for another use. And I think that's important for your considerations here. So as I said earlier, logs are delivered to the site by tractor trailer. They're unloaded for assembly, and then they're just temporarily stored on site long enough for the logs to be notched and fit together and then moved off site. There's no long-term storage on the site. The logs are from beetle kill and other forest fire mitigation and forest stewardship and management programs. So that's a great benefit as well. There's actually kind of minimal processing of the logs. They're notched and kind of minimally cut, and and then the parts of the log that can't be used in the log home are processed for firewood. And sawdust is also contained and then hauled off site for use in animal bedding and landscaping and things like that. So all the products that are brought to the site are used. They aren't carted off to a landfill. They don't accumulate on the site. So it'll be a very clean and neat operation. I wanted to talk a little bit about some misconceptions, I think, that have been sort of plaguing this, this project for the last several years. Independent Log Company is not a logging company. The timber cutting activities of Independent Log are limited to forest fire fuel reduction, such as removal of beetle kill. The proposed use of the site here is not a lumber mill. A lot of people have sort of characterized it in that way. It's nothing like that. They build log, well, I've talked significantly about what they do, but it's not a lumber mill. There won't be any access from the site directly onto the Carpenter Trail Road. I think there's been some confusion about that. All access to the site will be on and off of Lebanon Road. There's been some confusion about whether hazardous materials have or will be stored on the site. They haven't and won't. They've never stored hazardous materials on site, and these uses don't entail that. As Tony said, the noise levels were tested on the various activities that they're going to do on this site, and all of the noise levels were below the decibel level limit per the state statute and per local land use code at the property line. Also, Independent Log has added an enhanced muffler on the firewood processor to make it quieter for the neighbors. Also, as Tony said, there's not much dust potential. The property already has a good gravel base from prior use, and that's been enhanced and will be more so probably over time. And they'll if during dry conditions, they will water the site to prevent dust. Let's see. You can probably hear the frustration in Tony's voice. They've been kind of in this land use application process since about early 2022. They were first required by city staff to apply for a rezone to industrial and to withdraw their conditional use permit application. There's been quite a bit of misdirection and confusion in what the use entails, and they really think this is a good use. They've done some outreach to the neighbors. They've tried very hard to work with city staff and really want to get moving on this as soon as they possibly can. I want to talk a little bit about the open storage that Planner mentioned earlier. The Independent Log is asking for a CUP for the uses described. Those uses are allowed in this zone district with the CUP, and they all those uses entail open storage. So open storage is inherent in these uses. So the issue is not how open storage is or isn't defined in the code. It isn't whether or not open storage is allowed in a particular zone district. The important thing to focus on is that these land uses are allowed, but with a CUP in this zone district. And in other words, the calculation about whether or not open storage is allowed is already inherently within the fact that these uses are allowed in the zone district. So I hope you don't get very sidetracked by that. It's not really a relevant consideration, legally speaking. Similarly, because you're making a recommendation here today on a conditional use permit application, the issue is not whether an industrial use should or should not be next door to residential property. That has already been addressed in your code by the fact that these uses are allowed with the CUP. The issue before you today is, as the planner said, whether or not this meets the criteria for a CUP that the code lays out. And we, of course, believe that ILC has demonstrated compliance with those criteria. I want to talk a little bit about buffers since that's come up. As stated in the project narrative, buffers are not necessary or required by the land use code here. The natural features of the site and the surrounding sites, the elevation differences, make buffering unnecessary and probably also impractical. It's gonna be very difficult to buffer something that sits 100 feet above the site. The surrounding, also, it would be unfair to require this property owner to provide buffering for the Carpenter Trail area. All that Carpenter Trail area is surrounded by industrial and heavy commercial uses, none of which have any buffering at all. You can see from the Carpenter Trail area, they're all looking right out onto industrial uses and vice versa. One land use has, equipment right up next to the Carpenter Trail, porta potties and all kinds of activity goes on there that isn't buffered in any way. So to require this property owner to buffer would be inconsistent with what you've required of other land uses. Also, the fact that it's not buffered doesn't impact the use of the Carpenter Trail. It's still used and enjoyed by people, so there's no impact that needs to be mitigated from this land use for the Carpenter Trail. One of you mentioned that this is a quiet area. My visits there don't indicate that. It's not particularly quiet. It's right on a highway. There's a lot of highway noise. There are a couple of 24-hour-a-day land uses there. There's a lot of industrial use around there. So to call this area quiet doesn't really characterize the area or the land uses in the area. Let's see, we talked about that. I wanted to mention the paving. The condition that is in the staff report is acceptable in that the dust will be mitigated by, if there is any, there won't probably be much, but if there is, they'll mitigate it with wetting using the equipment that they have on site. They don't want to be required to pave, and I think it'd be an undue burden on this applicant to be required to pave any of the site. Any more impervious area is a problem. I think the area drains really well as it is. The site does anyway. Impervious surfaces make that more challenging. Also, the trucks that come and go are pretty heavy, and it would be a constant maintenance battle. And also, just as it is, it already meets the code. The code requires a durable all-weather surface, and that's what is already there. Let's see. I want to also talk about the 10% landscaping requirement. Those requirements, if you look at your land use code, are related to commercial uses. This is an industrial use. And as I'm sure you know, as planning commissioners, and your land use code as well, acknowledges that industrial sites don't need to be landscaped the same way a commercial site does. They're totally different uses. Landscaping is appropriate for commercial uses where you have people coming in and out of buildings and people coming to park and going in and out. You want nice landscaping, nice parking for them, and shade and things like that. But industrial uses, to require a 10% of landscaping would be sort of antithetical to industrial use. Let's see, I think that was. Just looking through my notes. Thanks for bearing with me. We talked about the driveways. So in sum, we would request approval respectfully of the conditional use permit, that you send a recommendation of approval on to the city council. I think they're committed to being good neighbors. They've worked with neighbors to ensure that the neighbors understand what's going to go on in the site. They've, you know, as Tony said, debunked some of the concerns that were being bandied around earlier that really don't have any basis, like noise and hazardous materials and so thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Now we're going to do public comment, then questions. Okay. So if there are people who would like to make a public comment on this proposal, please come up and state your name and address at whatever microphone height suits you. And each person will have 3 minutes. If you have extra time, you cannot yield your time. So 3 minutes is what you get, and you can't give that away to your friends. So if there's anyone who wants to comment, please step forward. And if not, then we will go ahead and ask the applicants questions.
I'm Gayla Pock, and one thing about this application that bothers me is it says multiple times in the application, the two abutting...
Madam Chair, I don't believe her microphone is on.
Oh, can you make sure the green button is on the mic?
The green light is on.
Okay.
Am I not speaking loud enough?
Yeah, maybe just bring it a little closer to you.
It says the application copy that we've got says the two abutting residences are already naturally buffered from the proposed land use by the height difference of the existing bluff or hill on the south property line. This is stated several times in the application. Mr. Moore is correct that up on the top of the hill, it appears that there is no sound carrying up there, but there's two properties whose backyards go down and adjoin the independent log property, and that's their backyard. And the noise levels as measured on that, I believe it was Sunday, a week and a half ago or something like that, actually exceeded state standards. And this is people's backyard. It may not be landscaped, but it is people's backyard. And to allocate their backyard as a buffer is using other people's land without permission or without compensation. And that is not proper. The noise level, according to Colorado standards, at their property line, their backyard property line, should not exceed what Colorado standards are. And Cliff Gifford, one of those property owners, did measure during that tour we had that the sound level was quite a bit higher than what the Colorado standards are. So do remember that bluff is not a buffer. That's two people's backyards, and they have full right to use it whenever they choose without having to deal with excess noise. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Lana Waters, Cortez. I've been watching Tony and Mary fight this from the very beginning, and they have went above and beyond trying to do the right thing, trying to do whatever the city has asked them. And in my opinion, they have been asked to do more than most applicants that I have seen in the last 30-some years that I've been coming to these meetings. And I feel that there's been times that they've been held to a higher standard. For what purpose? I have no idea. They've done tests that no one else has ever had to do before. I believe that they would be a great benefit to the community. And I heard their attorney speak about misconceptions and confusion surrounding ILC, and that's because I believe that they have been held to a different standard than any other applicant. And I would just like to say, I would love to see them in the community. I think they'd be a great benefit, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other commenters? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment period now. Now is the point where we can go ahead and ask questions of the applicant.
I think my question is more so for the council. I don't see here that we are requiring, or are we requiring 10% landscaping? No. Okay. So now the question to you, sir. I see here you guys you guys have added the entry with landscaping. Is that like volunteer, or is that just to mitigate the 10% landscaping?
Are you asking me? It's just to make the entryway look nice. It is landscaping, yes, but yeah.
Okay.
It's also to mark the entrance to the site, to provide some security so that people don't, drive vehicles into the site who don't belong there, those kinds of things.
Okay. So is that gated, or is that just going to be like 2 fence posts there?
It's gated,
It's going to be gated?
yes.
And that's the only place that you guys are going to drive the log homes through, is that entrance, right? Exit and enter?
Yes, that's our only entrance that we have to that property. We're not proposing anything along the Carpenter Trail Road.
Okay. I could have sworn was there a tree in that area vicinity at the entrance? No, it's just all gravel, right?
It's what?
It's just all gravel in that entrance? There's no trees or shrubs around there, is there?
Yeah, there's some grass and stuff as you come down the driveway.
Okay.
Yep. Some trees, there's some grass, natural vegetation.
Okay. I was just curious about that because it's a new addition, so I just wanted to make some clarification. Thank you.
My question is for Ms. DeConish. You stated in your presentation that the site plan was going to be updated to include the engineer's requests from, I believe it was dated March 26th. So what we're reviewing tonight is not the actual finalized plan that would potentially be included when this goes to the council? Because I think you mentioned moving a storage area, including the engineer's stamp. There were a few other things, and so I'm just wondering, those feel like not just sort of clerical changes, they feel substantial. So
Yes, when I talked with city staff about this, they indicated that those were going to be tonight, just because we didn't get the comments soon enough to address them before this hearing, but they were going to be made conditions of approval. So those will be the the only changes on the staff report. I think we can maybe show where some of that will, I mean, really the only change to the site plan, other than adding information, like most of those is just gonna be adding dimensions and things that were asked for. The only change is to the site plan that entails a different location for something is the log deck to the north. That will be moved a few feet, and maybe Tony can tell you exactly how many feet, just out of the floodplain. So it'll just move south and nothing else moves. So I think you should be able to visualize that. But it's my understanding that staff was making those a condition of, recommending making those a condition of approval, and that those would be addressed either before city council sees this or before the permit issues, depending on how fast we can get the engineers to jump on this.
Okay, thanks. And then my second question, Mr. Moore, is you mentioned earlier that there was actually going to be 2 lean-tos, and there's only one on the site plan. So I guess I'm wondering, are there going to be 2? And if yes, is that an update that's going to be included in the site plan that we don't have in front of us tonight?
So if you look through the narrative,
I'm just asking, like, on the plan, though.
it's in there, you know, so,
Can you show me where?
go show her, Mary. What we proposed is a lean-to over the, yeah, so right here, it's showing right there to the south. And again, to correct Nancy, that was always in the south. You know, the other site plan that we had before.
Yeah, but
That band mill was at the south, it was right there. But yes, the firewood processor also has a lean-to over it.
and that's the firewood processor area in the
Yes,
northwest
but
corner.
we'll identify that better on the site plan. But it's in the narrative. There's pictures. I mean, you know, we've been doing this for 4 years. It's, you know, I don't.
Seen each other a few times.
Yeah.
I had one more question. You mentioned that there were a lot of pictures in the narrative. It seems like those are a lot of pictures of your neighbors, and I'm wondering, did I just miss a picture of the driveway material sort of showing that it is impervious requirements, or was that not included?
That's in there. Shelley maybe can go over that, but no, there's nothing. We had an engineer look at the driveway. Nancy's using the wrong wording. She's not an expert as far as driveway. He looked at it. It's good. It's very durable. You know, we're going to meet the requirements as far as the whole thing. I've already got an engineer that looked at it. We're way above code. It was like,
Okay, but there are no pictures or statement from that engineer in the narrative.
well, he's getting them now, you know, because this is just again, Shelley just covered it. This is another, you know, thing that has been back minute thing from staff.
Okay,
And that's what it's been 4 years of, is 4 years of, we get right to the punchline, and then here's this grocery list. Bam, you know, me and Mary get the grocery list done, and then there's another grocery list. You know, that's been my 4 years. My poor wife has been through the ringer of getting paperwork into the city and everything. And the
Sorry to
driveway
interrupt.
was already looked at way back. I mean, this thing was looked at 2 years ago. It was looked at from the city engineer at that time. There's a report about it from the previous engineer that worked for the city here. We've covered this stuff. I mean, we're covering the same stuff.
Okay, those are my only questions.
There
are
is a photo of the access driveway that was in the PowerPoint presentation that we presented to you guys the last time we were here. And it's still in the PowerPoint. I just can't figure out how it's on page 43 of that PowerPoint, but
Okay, so it was included in the
you can see that it's well gravelled, and that at the entrance it's asphalt. So
Okay, so we have we have that photo in your application materials. It's just not.
I'm just having trouble figuring out how to put it up on the screen for you here today.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from my fellow commissioners?
I'd like to clarify, so, one of the public got up and claimed that there was a test done there at Cliff's house. So if you're not careful, you're reading the traffic noise. So I also done numerous tests there. And so me and Brandon Hill done a test there behind Cliff's house. My property line runs quite a ways up if you looked at the map. So in his backyard, in the two homes there at the bluff, you are going to stand out there with a decimal reader and you're going to get 60 to 80 decimals, if not higher, throughout the day. We had spikes even up in the high 80s, but it was from the road. It was not from ILC. So you shut everything off down at my place, and me and Brandon were sitting there testing it, and we had high 80 tests there behind Cliff's house, but a Harley motorcycle was going by. And I noted to Brandon Hill, the eyewitness that was with me there, that lives up on the neighborhood, I said, well, you're going to have them peaks throughout the day as a truck comes and it doesn't have a muffler or he has his Jake brakes on. But I had my fire radios, and I called down to my crew and I said, fire up everything you got. And we both sit there, and the noise level was in that 60 to 80 range. And when they fired all 5 things up, it never even moved the decimal reader. It's a non-issue. They're not going to hear me at all. The highway is their worst enemy, not ILC. And that has been done, a lot of tests on that. You cannot hear me up that hill, period. I've already proved it. You know, so folks there was another guy that because I went up there after the noise test and met with a lot of folks. And there was another gentleman that lived way down Empire, and he was out there, you know. And also note that, you know, they were using, so the iPhones, I found out that was about like 4 to 6 decimals lower than my actual decimal reader. It was weird. Like, you put up them iPhones, but also it's the way that you hold them. If you're holding your iPhone and you're putting your hand over the speaker, I sit there on a few people and it was 10 decimals lower than mine. And jokingly around, I said, hey, let's use your guys' readings. You know? But I was only 44 decimals at the property line right there. Well, you know, so we wrote it down accurate and everything. This got very exhaustively tested that day. I mean, there was a lot of people. They put people out all over the different areas and everything. And so the gentleman that was reading all the way down the street, he was way too far to hear any of my noise. He was picking up other noise. He was picking up other noise levels.
Other questions?
Oh, I'd like to clarify the traffic. Okay, so there ain't going to be, I'm going to beat on this a little bit to where everybody gets a bird's eye view. It's not like so in the proposal, we proposed, you know, we're saying that, you know, we do 1 to 3 log cabin kits a year because mostly we're out on the fires. Anymore, I spend about 6 to 8 months doing fires. When we come off the fires in the fall, we'll bring some loads in there and we'll notch a cabin kit. Well, a cabin kit only takes 3 loads of logs. That's it. Well, then you go to start building the load of logs and you're busy on that. You're not hauling logs in. And you get done with the kit, then you move the kit off site. So now you're off site building the house and you're tied up for 4 to 6 months completing the house. So this property is actually going to be, not actually, this property is going to be used very, very little. All along for 4 years, I tried to get staff to see it, and they never seen it. They think that this is something like ironwood out there, or Mancus, or aspen wallwood. Constantly, I kept trying to rein them in, saying, this is a family-owned business. This is a simple project. And we're gone all the time. So even meeting with the homeowners up there, it got to be very pleasant to meet them because they had a different narrative in their mind too. And I said, and so as we met, and I said, and I told them and explained the narrative, I said, we're going to be gone all the time. So this application is going to be the best for you because you're going to have your natural trail there to walk, and I'm not even going to be here. It's really simple math. I mean, it's been blown way out of proportion. So I kind of gave them the example that day. I had the pamphlet of what you can do as far as a use by right that's already permitted. And I said, well, what about a bar? You want a bar here? You want a mechanic shop, welding shop? There's all kinds of stuff I can do with this property, folks. I'm not going to sell it. I'm not quitting. I'm not going away. You know, it's just getting worse and worse for the city in the due process part of it. So it's like make it simple. So that's what I was saying earlier. I'm asking planning and zoning, and I'm definitely going to be asking council, quit making it so complicated. It's a lean-to structure. I don't need a full-blown engineer to design this little lean-to structure that's going to be taken down. I want that off the books. You know, I've had enough. I've had enough of a grocery list. It's time let's approve this, and if not, I'm going to Plan B, and I'm going for the bar. And then the homeowners will hear real noise. 2 o'clock in the morning.
Have any other statements about the application?
Well, this is all about the application, Emily. This is all about the application. This has been 4 years that the city of Cortez has ran me around. So, you know, that's where that conveys. So all the engineering stuff, we are working on that with the engineer now. And for example, one of them was swalls. We never proposed swalls. There's no swalls in this packet. He comes back and says, explain swalls. All we proposed is a little drainage ditch. Compatibility, you know. You look around the other properties, I own right across the street. It's the same, similar use. What I have all my equipment across the street. You look at the granite guy. Look at how much open space storage he's got. So when I was run down these rabbit holes, I'm like, why would I fence the property? That calls for graffiti, weeds blowing up against the property, you want to talk about a fire hazard, a whole bunch of tumbleweeds against a fence. This has just been way too much. See? Are there any more questions?
No more questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to close the public portion of the hearing. Thank you to our applicants for speaking, our public commenters, and now we will go ahead and discuss and deliberate. Any thoughts from my fellow commissioners?
None. Thank you. Thank you guys for your time.
I think we just need to put it to a vote, and I think the only plans to go to the city.
Yeah, I actually feel a little bit uncomfortable simply including all of the engineer's comments as a condition of approval. My understanding of the discussion tonight was to clarify the site plan modifications that had been made from the October meeting. I do not feel that the presentation that we were given tonight and the discussion that we've had adds any clarity to it. We're not seeing the actual site plan. We're seeing a site plan and being told that it is again going to be modified. My inclination would be to table this and be able to review it with the actual site plan that will be going to the city council. And I don't know, I mean, I would entertain discussion on that. I would happily make a motion on that and we can vote on it. That's just sort of my understanding of the discussion tonight is the site plan we're looking at isn't actually the site plan that's gonna be the final one. We're done with the public comment part of the hearing. No, I know, but we're done with the discussion part. Now we're deliberating.
I do think you make a really great comment in regards to the engineer's comment, and yeah, honestly, that's true. What's given here is not the final. And can I ask council a question? Can I ask you guys a question? If they have, I guess what I'm asking is, if this is not the final description and they have to revise it, do they have to come through here again with that update?
Well, it's rarely the case that on a complicated application, that what is presented is what gets finally approved, because different conditions are imposed, different requirements, changes. I mean, I've seen them make changes in the meeting that would require some modification to the application, especially at the planning commission level going forward to the city council. So it's not uncommon. Rarely do you have a clean version. I mean, it happens, and we just witnessed one, the previous application, but it's not uncommon for the discussion that occurs at the planning commission to impose conditions or changes to a site plan or a plat that are required prior to final approval. And in fact, city council often will impose an additional condition, and it may be that you move the entrance 20 feet, or things like that are frequently done on the fly at the public hearings. And so it's made a condition of the approval, but they don't come back through the process. Now, what happened previously, and the reason they're before you today rather than having it completed back in October, is there was a mix-up in the version of the site plan that was reviewed and approved at the planning commission, or recommended for approval at the planning commission, and the version that the applicant wanted to go forward with in front of city council. And it wasn't some minor tweaking here and there. The staff reviewed it and decided that it was substantial enough. And it wasn't that the applicant took what was approved and dramatically changed it. I think there was some confusion as to what had actually been submitted for planning commission review was different than what the applicant had wanted to have reviewed. And so they looked at a different plan than what the applicant wanted. And rather than just push it on through city council. The idea was that the changes were significant enough that additional review by staff was warranted, and then a second review by the planning commission was warranted.
So
In
this
this
is the-
case, you've got recommendations from the engineer that, as I understand it, came in just a day or two ago, that have asked for some changes. I'm not aware that those changes are significant, but certainly that would be up to the planning commission to determine if you felt that further review was warranted. It wouldn't be review by staff or the contract engineer, because they've done their review. So it would be, the applicant's engineer would be putting items, changing the plan hopefully before it got to city council. But again, I've seen city councils and county commissioners approve site plans with conditions that required a building to be moved, or light poles to be rearranged, or, things like that didn't significantly alter the overall scope of what was being proposed, but they were, and oftentimes they were just discussed and presented at the meeting, not even a day or two before, but the applicant obviously didn't have the opportunity to make the changes at the meeting, so an approval was voted on at the meeting with a condition that the changes that were discussed, either recommended by staff prior to the meeting or at the meeting by the planning commission or council, need to be made before it could be, before the site plan would be signed and recorded. So you rarely will approve, I won't say rarely, but it's not uncommon to approve a site plan with conditions that slightly alter the site plan, and those are not generally brought back before the approval body. Staff reviews the changes to make sure they comply with what was recommended as a condition by the planning commission, but the planning commission and the city council, even further down the road, don't usually bring it back for another review unless the changes are really significant and it's essentially a different application.
Yeah, and I guess the point that I was making is that this already feels a little unusual, and that we are here discussing changes to a site plan that we've already recommended approval of the application. And that's why it feels not great to not have that actual fully updated site plan in front of us.
Emily, just if I could, I know I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it is very common for engineering comments, the last step of the engineers to be not done until, we often say prior to building permit on that. Engineers never stamp their plans until it's all approved, because they don't want to stamp multiple versions. That would be confusing. The only change I see here that will be visually apparent would be the log decks. And we did get testimony from the applicant's attorney that it's not going to be a huge change. So they're not going to pick them up and put them in someone's backyard. They're going to slide them to the south a little bit, is what I heard and what I expect to see going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we review permits all the time at work with stamped engineers' plans months, sometimes years before they get approved. So I guess that's just a difference of type of engineering plans. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to entertain a motion from my fellow commissioners. This is just deliberations, and I'm just sharing my thoughts.
Yeah, upon reviewing just the engineer's comments, I don't think any of this will be such a drastic change to what is existing. As far as like driveway entrance, the drainage plan, I think that was there in the previous one. It does not state that here, but yeah, I don't see any kind of drastic changes that would affect what's presented here today. So, any comments?
Make a motion.
Thank you. So I make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends that council approve the requested conditional use permit and site plan for the property located at 1050 Lebanon Road, Cortez, as submitted by Anthony Moore and Mary Lancaster through P&Z's Resolution Number 7, Series 2024, with the conditions stated in the resolution.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can we take a vote?
Tao,
Yes.
Fryhofer,
Yes.
Waldron.
No. Okay, motion passes. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute recess before we resume with our last item of the evening, which is resolution number 6. So let's plan to come back in here at 8:27.
These two signs, let's be voting. Oh, cool. And the minutes and Sligo and Lindquist. Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm just like so used to taking notes electronically, you know, and then I wish I. But then today I was like, I'm gonna scribble something down. Where's my pen?
It's nice. I can't see, but I'm like, looking at my phone.
Hi, Laurel, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Looks like she's unmuted.
Do you guys have?
Here.
Oh, cool.
Oh, okay. We're just testing. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
I think if you guys are ready with tech, we're ready to resume. Okay. We're going to continue our commission meeting with our final item of the evening, which is resolution number 6, a LePew site application. Nancy?
So our next request here is a little bit further down the road at 1880 Industrial Road. The request is for a site plan for a 4,000 square foot office shop building. It's zoned industrial in the industrial park. The property is adjacent to the existing LePew Porta-John office and storage yard located at 2002 Industrial Road. However, the properties are separate, and the review should be conducted as a standalone property. This site was initially issued a building permit and construction mostly completed before it was noted that a site plan review by the Planning Commission and City Council was required and not completed. Did you? Keep going. Go to the next one, yeah. Go back one. I just wanted to point, do you have the pointer? So I'm probably not gonna be able to do this. What, it's moving funny, but this is the property in question. You can see the building on the aerial photo. And then adjacent, that little notch out, is their other property, so that is separate and not part of this. They are currently operating on the site with a temporary certificate of occupancy. We have required that they go through the process here before they can get a final. The property is surrounded on 3 sides by industrial zone properties and developed properties. To the east is Carpenter Reserve, which we've heard about. So here's the site plan there. As far as development standards, the proposed use, I went through lot areas, setbacks, etc. It does meet or greatly exceed all of the minimum lot areas, setbacks, etc. Lot coverage, floor area, parking. They're actually providing the 10 spaces as required, paved, and they do have a lot of additional parking areas on the site that are paved. As far as landscaping, they are proposing 400 square feet, which is up near the entrance to the road, consisting of essentially boulders and some zero-scape. The applicants have stated that they believe they meet the landscaping requirement of 10%. It is required in industrial areas, by the way, and I can read you the code on that. By providing 10% of the actual building pad, building footprint. The code currently, though, however, does say 10% of the commercial area to be developed. As far as issues, as I said, it seems to meet all the code requirements with the exception of perhaps landscaping. The other issue would be as far as paving. The code requires paving of access drives. They are proposing not to pave that. It's already in, it's gravel. The apron is paved as required or will be. But however, they do not want to meet that paving requirement. They did pave the apron in front of the building, which serves as the parking. So they're meeting that requirement. It's really the driveway that's they're not proposing. As far as comments, we do have comments from the from a different contract city engineer on the plans. They didn't provide them in a narrative format, so I provided those for you. They do have significant number of comments that should be addressed. Again, we were recommending that they be addressed prior to building permit, well, finaling of the building permit in this case. Other agencies, no other agencies have expressed any other concerns. Really, with that, staff's recommending approval.
You talked about that already.
Oh, there's your criteria. I went through all that. Oh, I wasn't even looking up.
Sorry, I forgot to put it on the screen.
You want to go to the recommendation? Staff is recommending approval. We have 3 conditions that they meet all requirements of the code. Number 2, the appropriate construction drawings and reports for the project revised as required by the city engineer, be signed and stamped onward, etc. And that also, there has been a big issue with drainage on this. The adjacent landowners have expressed significant concerns. I think they're here tonight. The third recommendation or condition would be that the drainage report meeting all requirements of CDPHE be submitted and approved by the city engineer prior to issuance of the final building permit for the property. Any questions?
I have none.
I don't think we have any. Thank you, Nancy. Did the applicant have a presentation?
I was just going to give a bit of an overview, and then the applicants will give a discussion or answer any questions. This is Laurel talking.
Okay, go ahead, Laurel.
Okay, so as staff went over, 1880 Industrial Road was purchased in November 15th, 2022. And in December 19th, 2022, they applied for a grading permit that was issued. A day later, they paid the $40 fee and provided a $1,000 bond. In May of 2023, they had a geotechnical report prepared by a professional engineer. On June 28th, 2023, they had a site plan prepared by that same professional engineer. July 11th, 2023, they had a drainage study prepared on the property. And then July 13th, 2023, they applied for the building permit with all of that above material submitted to the city. That building permit was issued, and 1880 Industrial paid a fee of $2,837 to the city, and then a $7,950 use tax. They've constructed this property in compliance with all of those plans, drainage studies that were submitted to the city prior to getting their building permit. They relied on that building permit in doing all this construction, and they were not told to go through this site plan review process until there were issues between the city and the neighboring property. So 1880 is doing everything they can to meet the city's requirements, but imposing additional requirements on them is causing a huge financial burden as they're trying to open their business. So in terms of what the staff is recommending, 1880 is happy to move forward with those recommended conditions, so long as we can clarify with number one that they will not be required to do additional landscaping or paving. The applicant's engineer, Mr. Kistler, is there tonight, and he can discuss further why paving is a poor idea on this site, given that drainage is already a concern. And then with landscaping, although as the staff points out that landscaping is applicable for industrial properties, there are no commercial properties or residential properties in this area. So the condition for landscaping to provide beautification for visitors to the property is not really applicable here. And in addition, with keeping landscaping watered is also a problem on this property. That is it from me, but the applicants are happy to answer any additional questions.
Okay, thank you. Now we will go ahead and open the public comment period on this agenda item. Is there anyone who wishes to make a public comment? And even though you already spoke, just please restate your name and address. Same rules apply, 3 minutes per person.
Lana Doodad Storage. The land use code was put into place.
I'm sorry. We need to ask
I don't know if that's it. Yeah.
I have been damaged by the applicant, so we would like a little bit of extra time to speak. So I'll make it as quick as I can, and then he can speak.
Perfect.
Okay? The Land Use Code was put into place in 1996 to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the community. It is my belief that if 1880 LLC had followed the proper procedures, this protection could have been ensured. However, rather than engaging in the planning process before development, they have, in my opinion, violated these regulations. As a result, my adjacent property has been damaged and the safety of the community has been compromised. It should be noted that LePew is here tonight seeking forgiveness rather than permission. Mr. Thompson served on the Planning and Zoning Commission for 13 years, including which he was chairman for 6.5, during which he played a key role in shaping and adopting this land use code. He voted in favor of regulations such as dust-free driveways, access, and off-street parking, as well as landscaping requirements. Now, after years of these regulations being imposed on others, he's requesting his exemptions for his own project are an undue burden for himself, but seemingly not for the community. Additionally, when we first met Mrs. Thompson in 1987, she was working for Public Works at a time when planning fell under its jurisdiction. It wasn't until approximately 2010 that the planning department became an independent entity. Given their extensive experience and deep familiarity with the code, the Thompsons should be well aware of the proper procedures and requirements. Why have the agency review comments not been updated? The comments from the Sand District and Empire were made by individuals who have not worked at these agencies for months. Additionally, why were there no comments from Atmos, which Atmos's line is being eroded at this time? They have been directly affected, or from Parks and Rec, which played a significant role in the ILC process in the past. LePew borders the same open space, making Parks and Rec's input highly relevant to this project. There are also serious concerns regarding procedural missteps by staff. According to Section 6.14C5 of the LUC, a grading permit cannot be issued without prior site plan approval by the P&Z. Furthermore, Section 6.14H states that it is unlawful to issue a building.
That's the end of your time. Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Please state your name and address before you start.
Graham Nilsson, 27221, County Road P3, Dolores. There are also serious concerns regarding the procedural missteps by staff according to Section 6.41, paren C, paren 5 of the LUC. A grading permit cannot be issued without a prior site plan approval of P&Z. Furthermore, Section 6.414H states that it is unlawful to issue a building permit before the site plan approval. Despite these clear regulations, there appear to have been a failure to adhere to the proper process. Additionally, it is unclear why Mr. Chambers of BHI was tasked with reviewing all the plans instead of the city's contract engineering firm, SGM. BHI was reportedly under the impression that it was a proposed development and not provided with all relevant information. Given these procedural discrepancies and the embarrassment of this situation has caused the city, I would respectfully request that this be tabled and the site plan and updated drainage plan prepared by Earth Art undergo thorough and careful review by SGM before any further action is taken. Thank you for your consideration and your time.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Waters. First, I'd like to ask for extra time because, as I told you before, our property's been damaged, our life has been impacted, and there's some serious safety, public safety issues that need to be addressed. And 3 minutes doesn't really give us that time to address everything that is deficient on this. I think you received a pretty lengthy submittal from us. I don't know if you've had a chance to review it, but I respectfully ask that we get extra time.
Everyone gets 3 minutes for public comment, so go ahead and start.
Can you start the clock over, please, so I can start my comments?
I think that would be fine.
All right, I just have some bullet points. I'm going to have to go through this real quick. First of all, public safety. Atmos Energy has not been notified that the drainage problem that the Lepew property has created, which is washing out a 2-inch gas main buried on our property, and it's a serious public hazard. They also have fall hazards on their property because they've cut slopes, vertical slopes, approximately 20 feet high that aren't shown on their plan. There's sediment problems going into McElmo Creek, the Gear Natural area. Storing chemicals next to the drainage area that they created, which could, if there was a spill, could flow into the pond in Gear Natural area and continue into the Carpenter Natural area. This was all allowed to happen under the city's noses. The development is 600 feet from the engineer's office. The same engineer who happens to be Lepew's private engineer now, who seems to have developed amnesia as to the comments he made before, which weren't added to your packet. In my opinion, you are the #1 defense. If you don't want to hold them to the design standards and the LUC, then I will contact the appropriate agencies such as CDPHE, Division of Water Resources, Army Corps of Engineers, and anybody else. Also, we were required to have a bond when we didn't pave, when we couldn't pave because of COVID. These people have no bond to continue with their temporary permit. They're giving special favors because of who they are. The 10% landscaping and the paving are not only in the land use design or land use code, they are also in the design standards. I don't know if you can waive the land use code standards, but I don't think you can waive the design standards. Let's see. The engineer that did the comments on this project was unfamiliar with the fact that this project has already been built, as he refers to everything as proposed. And I don't understand why it wasn't the city's engineer, SGM, who the city hired before this to make comments that have been ignored and not put in this packet either. Can you please answer these questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Moore, 1107 Lebanon Road. So the problem I have is the double standards. You know, I was doing dirt work at the same time that Lepew was, exact same time. And city staff came and shut me down. You know, give me a cease and desist. I asked them why. They told me that it was dumping concrete on my property. They come by and inspected it. It wasn't concrete. Later on, they come and shut me down for hazardous material, dirt. That ended up not being true. The whole time I'm looking up there, I don't even know the Lepews, or I don't know them. But I go up there and I seen that they're doing dirt work. Well, you want to talk about a financial burden? What about ILC financial burden? The city come down, so I get going again. I have my grading permit. I'm going and they come down, shut me down, referring to wetlands. There's not even a wetland on my property. There's a 500-year floodplain and there's a 100-year floodplain. I can put as much dirt as I want in the 500-year floodplain. I already talked with the state guy. The main thing that I'm trying to get across is what the city needs to do is get a hold of these double standards. This creates a lot of animosity, a lot of trouble. They need to get their rules and stick with their code books. Quit coming up with all these shenanigans. That's what I've dealt with. So as I compare again to other people that has gotten approved, ultimately they need to get to work just like me. But how do we fix these problems that has taken place? Well, I know how to fix them. Quit coming up with more shenanigans. So I'm going to be real interesting to see what council votes tonight. I'm going to be really listening and watching in all the trouble I've had. Thank you.
Mary Lancaster, 1107 Lebanon Road. I too would just like to state that I don't appreciate the unfair treatment. LePew was allowed to operate with a temporary occupancy permit. We asked for the same thing, and the city told us that there is no such thing. They have been favored immensely. And so at this point, I'm in agreement with Lana. I think that this needs to be tabled, and I think you need to get a better drainage plan, and you need to look at what they're presenting, and it is inadequate. We got shut down for very minor things, and we can't even hardly build a temporary lean-to, and they were allowed to build a building and change drainage. That they have chemicals on the side of their property, and it's draining into the Greer Natural Area Pond. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, this is your last chance. Public comment period is now closed. Thank you everyone for your participation. Do my fellow commissioners have any questions either for the applicant or for staff?
I think my question is regarding that gravel, or the no pavement. Council, we are requiring a 10% landscaping, and are we also requiring pavement to that driveway?
I think that's a question for you tonight.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's really hard to determine where that, there's so many pictures. Okay.
I was wondering, staff, there's a lot of photos in the staff report, and it's not totally clear which photos are of the location that we're reviewing the application, the site plan for, and which are kind of surrounding areas. And so I didn't know if you could kind of clarify why, or I'm sorry, not in the,
In the packet, yeah.
the packet, yeah.
I did want to clarify that. Let's go with the first set of photos.
Yeah, so I guess I was looking at the application
Is
documents.
from, yeah, the first set of photos, which is talking about paving and not paving, is from the applicant and part of their application. And then I believe you got a new, in the packet, comments from, let's see how
Those
we-
are the doodad pictures?
Yes.
Okay.
Those came from the neighboring property owner.
Okay, thank you.
And of those pictures in the application, are they just showing us verification of everybody else's driveway? Is that what it's going on?
We can also ask the applicant questions too.
Okay.
I would maybe ask the applicant that question, what the pictures in your packet are trying to illustrate.
They have a chart, attachment B, the paving apron pictures, that lists what they all are. It's right before the photos.
So these are all neighboring businesses.
Other businesses in the industrial park for the most part.
Okay, thanks, that clears up my confusion about that. Do we have any other questions?
I think I'd like to go into an executive session with council.
I would agree with that.
I will give you the appropriate motion to be sure that we comply with the statute.
I think I have it here, Patrick. Cheryl just gave me the language.
Seeing what she gave you.
I was just gonna update the date, but I will seek your.
I think we have to.
With my 4 signatures.
Oh, look, it's working again.
Unplug it.
I'll go ahead and take it. I think we figured it out, actually. If you can fix your handouts, that's fine.
I think he gave you one.
Is this the same stuff you sent electronically too?
No.
Okay.
And I will get you a
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to enter into executive session. It is April 1st, 2025 at 8:58 p.m. and we are here at a regular meeting of the Cortez Planning and Zoning Commission, which has been properly noticed. I move that the commission enter into an executive session for the purpose of conferring with the city attorney to receive legal advice concerning the pending land use application pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes, Section 24-6-402, parentheses 4, parentheses little b. Is there a second? Can we have a vote?
Ryhover,
Yes.
Tao,
Yes.
Waldron,
Yes. Okay, motion passes. I don't know where executive session happens. Okay. It is April 1st, 2025, and the time is 9:36 p.m. The executive session has concluded, and commission has reconvened into open session. Those persons participating in the executive session were myself, Emily Waldron, commission members Richard Freihoff and Nina Tao, and city attorney Patrick Coleman, city planner Nancy Dosdall, and city economic and community development person Rachel Marbanks. No adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, rule, regulation, or formal action occurred at this executive session. If any member of the commission or a member of the public believes that the subject matter of the executive session was not statutorily authorized, or that the discussions that occurred in executive session strayed from the announced subject matter, please speak up now. Okay, seeing none, we will resume the agenda item. I believe we entered into executive session during deliberations and discussion. Did we have any further discussion or deliberation? I would also entertain any motions. Okay, seeing no more discussion, I am happy to make a motion. So I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission, actually, before I make a motion, I did want to make a statement or ask staff. It was brought up that this situation of a building permit being issued and then having the site plan, that there may be processes that could be revised, and I wanted to ask staff if those process revisions had occurred or would be occurring.
Yes, we made some significant changes to our processes to prevent something like this happening again, as far as prematurely issuing a grading permit and then a building permit without formal review.
Thank you. Okay, now I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve P&Z Resolution Number 7, Series 2025, a resolution recommending that the Cortez City Council approve the site development plan for a building located on property located at 1880 Industrial Road, Cortez, Colorado, in the industrial zone with the conditions stated in the resolution. And I just want to highlight those conditions so that everyone understands them. We have 3 of them. First is the standard all requirements of utility providers, city departments, CDOT, and affected districts must be satisfied. And the second 2 are asking for appropriate construction drawings and reports for the project, and a drainage report meeting CDPHE requirements to be submitted and approved by the city engineer. And so those are the conditions included in the motion that I just made. Is there a second?
I second.
May we take a vote?
Freihofer,
Yes.
Tao,
Yes.
Waldron.
Yes. The motion passes. That concludes our agenda for the evening. Yes, that's correct. That concludes our. Did we need to look at the permits, Cheryl? Just read them. Okay. Okay, I think that we are now adjourned. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and patience.
think, didn't they do some work for you guys? Property?
Okay.
Okay, well, I wanted
Next
to tell you
time.
too, I'm doing a one-woman show at the Sunflower.
Yeah.
Oh, I did tell you,
Yeah,
okay. On Friday and
Friday
Saturday.
and Saturday,
Yeah,
what time?
7.
7, okay. Yeah, I'll be done with that garden, well, I'm
Oh,
not
yeah, your
out there,
garden
but
show.